Good morning, Graham. How are you?
I'm great, Jason. You? Good to
I
be
am
here.
doing, yeah, great to have you on. We've been talking about this for quite a while, and you're finally here. And it is Friday, January 29th, 2021. It is a very, very brisk day where I am, which is 100 miles from where you are, because we were catching up on video and you were in Midtown Manhattan. It's pretty,
I
I think it's
am.
pretty cold there. It's pretty cold in the city today, too, isn't it?
It is. I've just done about a 40 block walk, and it's minus 17 in old money. So I think that's what around about -4 or -5.
Wow.
So it's
Good on you.
it, it, it's cold.
It is cold. Well, all right. I know we have a lot to talk about today. So, Graham, I'd love if you just introduce yourself, who you are. We already covered where you are in the world. You obviously aren't an American, so maybe where you're from in the world, and anything else you'd like to share with us to kick it off.
Now, here. I thought I'd hidden that. My name's Graham Dobbin. You're right. I'm not originally from New York. I'm originally from Scotland. I moved to New York about 3.5 years ago. And I work with a lot of companies in leadership development, employee engagement, sales. So it tends to be around about training, coaching, that type of thing. And I'm based in Manhattan. I don't know if there's anything
Very,
else I can tell you.
yeah, that's it. Thanks for the episode. I'll get this out next week. Great. That's it. All right. I'm going to get to know you really well, Graham, like I've gotten to know you, and get to hear your lovely accent throughout the hour. So I'm personally excited about that because I love a good accent. All right. You ready to kick it off, my friend?
Good, let's go.
Let's do it.
Let's do
First
it.
question. What is something that you nerd out about?
Something I nerd out about. Um, I'm one of those people that kind of jump into things as they happen. And at the moment, I'm nerding out about news and politics. I do that on a regular basis, but it's something I'm just really, really interested in. I'm always, and it was the same in the UK. That I mean, obviously, there's a lot of things happening here.
Just a couple things.
Just a couple of things. I'm actually the same building as Chuck Schumer's office at the
Oh,
moment,
really? Oh, I didn't know that. I
which,
didn't know he had an office in the city.
which means yeah, it was Hillary Clinton's old office, apparently, which means I've seen live news conferences outside the building. I managed to do a walk by on CNN last week, which was quite exciting.
Yeah.
I do. I'm fascinated about where people stand in politics, especially if I don't agree with them. And I'm constantly trying to understand why we see things differently. So I watch all different types of news channels, from
Mm-hmm.
CNN or MSNBC to Fox, and I've flicked onto the likes of OAN, and just to understand what's the message that's going out and what influences people. I mean, to me, it's really important. I need to understand what influences people. It's part of my job,
Yeah.
and if I just do it on my frame, um, it doesn't help me, and it doesn't help my development. And just watching how messages are framed and how they can get people to take action on different things, or vote in different ways, or have a bias or a prejudice. Either way, there's no judgment here. Either way is really fascinating.
Yeah. Is this something that you've always been interested in?
Yeah, it is. It was something. Even at high school, I was always interested in politics. Growing up in Scotland in the 80s was a really unstable time politically.
Yeah.
And obviously Scotland being a separate country, but being governed by the UK government based in London, there was a lot going on. So there were very Scotland's a very political country. Most people have got a very strong view about it.
I didn't know that.
Uh,
Yeah, that's interesting. I am I'm a news junkie, meaning I'm not like a avid news consumer all day long, but I'm religious about checking. I read CNN generally. I'm religious about going to CNN
mhm.
every morning. I've been pretty religious about listening to the New York Times daily podcast every day as I either drive my daughter to school or I take a walk in the morning just to catch up on the stories that they've had. And I've never I like politics, okay, but based on this last election, I got really into political science, like the actual, like the strategic part of it outside of the candidates, and how do you actually, where do you place your money? How do you, how do you empower the ground forces, like what happened in Georgia, like the strategy behind all that. Cause I didn't really study political science in college, but I got really fascinated by that, fascinated by the electoral college and how that all works. Like I knew how it worked, but not at the level. I feel like there's I saw a meme that's something like, they're making fun of CNN. They're like, I think his name's Jeff King or Peter King, where he's like telling them again that you need 270 votes to win the presidency. And it was like, MFer, I've watched this so much. I know every county in Pennsylvania. I know the controller's name in Arizona, and I know something like the assistant secretary of the voting machines in Georgia at this point. It was like really funny, but just I love it.
Yeah,
it is.
I think one of the things that it's something that's probably only just come to me recently over the last few years. Obviously, in the UK, there was a Brexit vote. And technically, I mean, it's very close. The Scottish independence vote was very close. The election here, when you look at the size of the country, it was relatively close percentage-wise. I know you got the popular vote and then the number of seats. So there's that imbalance, and it's always a kind of a winner takes all, which I'm fascinated about. So Brexit in the UK is just causing so many problems, and there's a groundswell now that people would probably vote in a different way now they've got the facts.
Yeah.
But the vote was on a very narrow subject, and most people who voted to stay in Europe is going, what did you expect? And most people who voted out, I mean, we've got the situation that you've got Brits living in Spain who voted to get out of Brexit, get out of Europe, which is now causing them problems where they live. And that almost couldn't be seen because the rhetoric was around something else. So I'm fascinated about the political science behind it, the small detail, how one or two really small areas can swing a whole country, and also how it almost feels that 48, 49, 50, 49.5% of a country don't feel represented. How dangerous that is, regardless of what our views are. So I'm genuinely fascinated by it.
Yeah. All right. Let's just talk about politics for the next hour so we can make sure that every single one of my listeners drops straight off here right now. Like, let's give them the heads up. No, we're not going to do that. They're here for you, my friend, not to hear just about politics. Politics is part of it. But so, Graham, I want to move to the next question and talk to you a little bit about your comfort zone. And we define the comfort zone as the things that you either like doing, obviously the things that you're comfortable in doing, the things that if I said, hey, Graham, will you do this or do you want to do this, you would likely say yes to it. So what's something that's inside of your comfort zone that might be outside of somebody else's?
Again, this has been probably a recent kind of understanding for me, is I would never have said I was particularly a risk taker. But when I look at everybody around me, I think, yes, I am. I know we've spoken about this before, I moved to New York when I was 50. Sold up in the UK, sold the house, didn't take on any more contracts, living week to week in an apartment, and didn't have a visa. And I just kind of felt it was normal. So I know that I'll take risks because I think I actually think, I've been thinking about this, I think the fear of not trying something is more than trying it for me. So the fear of kind of sitting back saying, you know what, I could have done this. Because there's so many things in my life that I could have done, and I didn't maybe take the next step, that now I'm prepared to give most things a shot. So I think probably what's inside mine is I'll take much bigger risks than not everybody, but most people.
Yeah. All right. I've got a risk for you to take right now. I'm going to send you a bank account number. I want you to send $5,000 to this bank account number, trusting that it's all going to work out okay.
Absolutely fine.
Perfect.
You do that.
And then on top of me sending it to you, I'll then read it out here on the podcast.
Hey, don't say that. Somebody's been using my Visa card this week.
Oh, real? Oh, that's a bummer. You had some fraud.
I was so impressed. I got the phone call. Are you trying to buy something from us? I went, no. And they went, so I was very impressed. But yeah, that's just happened to me for the first time ever this week.
Yeah, that's so annoying. All right, maybe next time. Maybe next time. Maybe I'll like
Yeah,
maybe the
absolutely.
next time you come on the
No,
podcast, you'll bring your bank account number.
I'll get to it.
All right, that's cool. So, how about the reverse of this question, Graham? So, this is something that you are uncomfortable doing that is going to be something that other people would be comfortable doing.
You know, what would I do? Roller coasters count?
Roller coasters count. I'm going to maybe prod you for something a little more internal.
Yeah, do you know what? And this kind of goes on to some of the other things that drive me. I think doing something that would be against someone else, so that anything that drives unfairness. Now, I've seen. I've lived in a number of different cities, and when you get to big cities, we meet lots of different characters, and some people are. I'm sure we can both say this. Some people look out for themselves as number one.
Yep.
I'm regularly uncomfortable with that. That people seem to be comfortable with being maybe over the selfish line, and that's a real challenge for me. So I think any time that I see anything that's potentially doesn't give someone fairness, is not inclusive, anything like that, that really strikes me. I don't know if that counts for being outside the comfort zone.
No, I think so. For sure.
That's something that would emotionally make me very, very uncomfortable.
Yeah. What do you, when you move into that, when you feel that scenario, what's your go-to behavior?
It gets me in trouble. I suppose a few years ago, I would step forward, I'd step in. So if I ever saw anything happening, I would be the one that's in the middle of it, even though it had really, to be honest with you, probably nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
So that's not always a good place to be. Now, I'll try to mediate or do something in a different way, just to allow all parties the best opportunity to see it from both sides. I'm being very diplomatic there, but in the past I've stepped in when probably I shouldn't have.
Yeah.
And we can't do that nowadays. You genuinely don't know what's going to happen.
That's right.
We've got to be careful. But that's kind of my go-to.
Yeah. Nice. Thank you for sharing that. And thanks for, moving past the roller coasters. Not that roller coasters isn't a good answer, but I had a feeling you had something that was a little more internal to you. All right. So we haven't really talked about this, but you do a lot of public speaking in the kind of career you have. And we'll talk a lot more about this here in a little bit. But before we do that, let's say that I have the power to give you 5 minutes. And I do here on the show have the power to give you 5 minutes. But let's say I had the power to give you 5 minutes to deliver a speech and the whole world would get to listen to it. Everybody in the world who wanted to listen to this thing could listen to it and take something from the Graham School of Wisdom. What would you give your speech on and why?
I suppose the first part of my thought process here is risk taking, but also curiosity. Now that's very high level, but to get into it is one of the things that was a huge changer for me was asking that next question always, not being afraid to be seen as being dumb or stupid. Just asking that next question to see where I was. And I genuinely think curiosity. I mean, when I do speak, I've got a story about how kind of curiosity left me when I was a child, and I think most of us go through that, and we get to a place of protection where we don't want to be necessarily seen questioning things. We want to fit in, and that begins to dampen our curiosity. And I wouldn't be in New York. I wouldn't have lived in London or in Manchester for the number of years that I did if I hadn't been curious about what could happen. Now, this isn't when I talk about risk taking, it's got to be moderated. It's not a case of just doing things and see what's happened. We've got to a risk assessment to be done on it. It's not about making silly decisions, but it's about making decisions or being brave enough to do it. So I think curiosity, risk-taking, bravery, courageous, just, what would happen if you took that one more step? Does it take you into something brand new? Do you fall over the cliff? I don't know.
Yeah.
Just ask yourself and make the judgment then, rather than that instinctive, that's my limit.
Yeah. Do you subscribe to the saying there are no dumb questions, just dumb people who ask them? You ever heard that? It's so bad, but
I'm trying to be so nice.
I love that. It's like there's no dumb questions here. You're like, yes, but there's a lot of dumb people who ask them.
Yeah, there are a lot of dumb people, and there's a lot of competition out there for being dumb.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I genuinely, when someone is curious, and yeah, sometimes you kind of look at them and go, really? You've got to ask that. But at other points, it's like, okay, it's been asked for a reason. And if there's any regret that I've ever got, it was that I stopped being curious. I wasn't curious enough. And I'm really lucky. I've done a whole load of different things.
Yeah.
But even then, I could have done so much more.
Yeah. There's something you're saying here. I wanted to actually ask you about this here, and we're going to get into kind of like what you've been up to and what you're up to now. And this is going to make a little more sense, but you do a lot of facilitations. And I would assume part of that facilitation, you do a lot of Q&As.
Yeah.
And I have to share with you one of my biggest pet peeves. And my guess is you hate this too. When somebody says, hey, I have a question, and then they basically tell you what they think for about 3 to 4 minutes. And then the question is, isn't that correct? You get that a lot in the trainings that you run?
Yeah. And I love when they say something like, isn't that correct?
Isn't that correct? That their question is, isn't that correct that I'm right?
You're correct. It isn't. Yeah, again, I'm lucky. I know, but we're in New York. I've got a very particular way that I do things. I've got a style which doesn't necessarily fit here as in the norm. So I'm genuinely, I'm very playful in it. I enjoy it. The facilitation there is anything that I do, anything that I need to do myself, as in a performance, the way I answer things, the way I push and prod people is all about them. It's never about me.
Yeah.
Yep. So I'm quite comfortable with calling people out in a really nice way. I'm never going to set someone up to fail. But what I do want to happen is for people to see, how could I do? Again, I'm coming back to curiosity. I'm constantly looking at allowing others to make a decision. This isn't about what I think's right or wrong. It's about where you're prepared to go. And if I can give you that opportunity to go and see what another 2 or 3 steps look like, and then you decide whether you want to take them or not, that's your choice. That's your choice. I make no judgment on that.
Very cool.
But so on the Q&A, I've actually got I've got to a point where I actually enjoy Q&A. I enjoy that point where I don't know what's coming at me. And I think that's actually made me better on my feet in front of people, because all I can bring is me. I can only be honest. I can only be authentic. I can't manipulate it in any way.
They ask you a question, you're like, hold on a minute. Let me see if I have that slide in my slide deck. Oh, I don't. Uh-oh, I'm screwed.
You know what? There used to be a thing, you just reminded me. I remember a few years ago when I was in sales, there was some very large confectionery companies. And this was before a lot of the large presentations. And the salespeople would go in with maybe a laptop and they'd be going through a PowerPoint, and buyers would deliberately question them about something or knock them off their stride halfway through the presentation.
Oh, yeah.
And they carry on and watch them fluff because everything was scripted.
Yep.
And they had to kind of go back 3 or 4 slides to get the thread of where they were, rather than just be able to be them. So when I talk about sales, when I talk about leadership, the biggest thing we bring is us.
Yeah.
And when we bring us to the table, then everything else hangs off it.
I love that. That's actually a great segue, Graham. We're going to take a very brief commercial break, and we'll be right back after this.
The Talking to Cool People podcast is brought to you by Jason Frizzell Coaching. Jason works with amazing people who are looking to find and develop their passion and purpose and create their journey to wherever it is they want to go. Check us out at jasonfrizzell.com, Facebook, or on Instagram. Jason loves hearing from anyone who thinks it would be cool to connect, to be coached, or to be a guest on our show. Email him at podcast@jasonfrizzell.com or DM him on Facebook and Instagram. And now, back to some more amazing conversation on talking to cool people.
Okay, Graham, we are back.
Right.
So you had mentioned before the break that we've alluded to this, and I think we've kept the audience in suspense for long enough now. Graham, would love if you would share with me, because I'm going to learn a lot here too, and with the audience in your journey. So you mentioned you're in sales, you mentioned you do, and I mentioned you do facilitation and training. Like, what would you like the audience to know about you and your journey? And yeah, and then wrap it up with this, like, what are you up to today? What do you spend your days doing?
You know what? I always find the journey question a really difficult one to know where to start. I mean, I'm not going to go. I'm really old, so I'm not going to go all the way back to high school.
You're not that old.
But I was a salesperson, and at some point, through a whole lot of different things that happened, I ended up negotiating, which to me is a sale, construction contracts in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
And then ended up owning a reasonable sized construction business.
What kind of construction?
Well, we actually did mainly fit out, so interiors, and we were doing them on new buildings. So we were doing like 5-star Hiltons, and one of the biggest jobs I did was the tallest residential building in Europe at the time, which was in Manchester, Northern England. So we were doing really well. Then something happened about 2008. 2009.
I've heard about that.
Yeah, as soon as you mention it here in New York, I watch people shudder. There was a financial crash.
Yeah,
and being in that position where I was no longer a salesperson, I was running a reasonably big business at the time. Trying to keep as many people in work as possible. Everything closing down around you was kind of scary. And I remember someone, and sometimes it's just a passing comment that changes everything. Someone said to me, "You'd be really good at getting people to reset themselves and look at what else they can do because you've got a lot of experience." So I said, "What do you mean, training?" And they went, "Yeah, something like that." And I just kind of went down that route, and I got into it. I took an unusual course. I did NLP, Neuro Linguistic Programming, come through that, decided I wanted to be a therapist, opened a therapy room in Manchester in England, realised everybody came in with problems then.
But are you a licensed therapist?
Yeah. And
seriously?
It didn't kind of last very long. And again, the challenge with therapy, Jason, is that there's so many different ways to be licensed as well. I just didn't think I was very good at it.
Okay.
Because I was sitting there and people were coming in with their problems, and guess what? I'm not the person to come in and sit and complain to all day.
Stop whining and go do something about it.
What have you been doing this weekend? So what I did find was happening was we're getting some really good results in the therapy, some quick interventions, but then people were coming back, and it was a great business model because it wasn't lasting.
Yeah.
I'm going to put. I hadn't actually seen this before. I'm going to put back onto my fairness. That's not fair. If someone, an intervention lasting for 3 or 4 weeks, then they need to pay more money to come and see me, is a great business model, but it's not what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So I kind of went on a journey of exploring how to become a trainer, a facilitator, etc. And now at the moment I've got one company here in New York, and I work with I partner up with a number of other companies like Dale Carnegie. I'm one of the senior trainers, so I've been working in the UK, the US, and Australia for them on some fairly large projects. I work with another company a German company where I partner with them, and we're working on Roche, Diagnostics, and BMW.
Oh, very cool.
So At the moment, it tends to be around about leadership, emerging leaders, sales. So there's a number of different things in there. I kind of keep to what I know I'm reasonably good at.
Yeah.
I don't just take something off the shelf and decide I can train it, because again, that's really arrogant, and I see too many people doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. Can I ask you a couple questions about the trainings you provide? Or I'm more interested in the insights that you glean from being in the front of these rooms. Can I ask you a couple questions here?
Of course.
Excellent.
Okay. That's what I'm here.
When is a good time for a company to hire your company or a company like yours? Because like Roche is a big company, they must have internal learning and development people. What would be your recommendation for companies? When should they bring in external trainers, facilitators, consultants, coaches to do this work as opposed to doing it in-house? And I'm thinking about my wife works. She works at a very large company. They have a big learning and development team, and they do almost everything in-house. They even develop their own material in-house. So how do you seek, or maybe the question is, how do companies decide when to pay an external vendor and when to actually do things, inside with their own staff?
That's an interesting question, Jason, because I think you've got me thinking now, and some of the companies that I work very, very well with is actually when we partner this. There's no internal or external. It's a joint effort.
Okay.
And there's a couple of reasons for that. Cost is a huge thing for companies, and having direct access. So you should, to me, if you're large enough, you should always have an internal resource, a place that people can go to. And it helps to get it in context. So it's about the company then. So, I do public, and just to put this in context, and I'll come back onto that. I do some public programs. And I remember being asked when I came to New York, how do you approach public programs differently to in-house and in company programs? I said, there's no difference. There can't be. So in a public program, I might have 20 people who are from different companies, different backgrounds, different ages, different industries. What we're talking about needs to work for them. They need to find why it works for them. It's not just, if anybody just says to you, do 1, 2, and 3, and 4 will happen, that's not true. And if it was, we'd all be booksellers. Go away and buy the book, read the book.
Right.
Okay? So the skill in facilitation is about bringing that to life. What does it mean to you? Get it into context. So coming back onto internal and external, an external facilitator like me, if I'm working with Google and BMW and Roche and WeWork and Lenovo and all these people, and can bring some of that. This week I've been working with the US Army on emotion.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, exactly. So if I can bring that kind of experience into the room and take what the internal team have pulled together in context that's real for the company, it's a brilliant blend. I've got a very good friend who's been working with Indeed, Stephen Holgate. He's been working with Indeed since they were like 500 people. They're now at 10,000. And he's been running and having a team run sales programs on a regular basis. But Indeed have also got something like 90 or 100 sales trainers. And it's getting that blend. It's genuinely been a real partnership and knowing when you can add value and when you don't. And I regularly work with internal. I'm meeting up with a BMW on Monday, and we work really closely on, right, we can do this, you do that. And there's enough work for everybody out there. So I don't see it as competition. I see it as something that's actually vital to bring in external perspectives, views, ideas, context. But everybody needs to be honest. So if I'm going in there, I'm being really careful that I know I'm adding value and I'm not just taking a day rate.
Yeah. I want to wrap this part of it and ask you something that I was thinking about what I wanted to ask you on the interview today, among other things. So I worked in corporate, and I worked at a couple of large telecoms where I got a lot of training. And it was a while ago now, but I was thinking about this, and what was always missing for me is the trainings were pretty good, but then there wasn't any follow-up, as I remember it. So I'm curious, like, how do you see that as still a pattern? And I know this is a general question. I guess the question is, what do you specifically do to ensure that the learning sticks? And yes, you're never going to get 100%. And yes, you can provide the slide. I do a lot of this stuff too. It's like, can you give me the slides? I'm like, sure. Are you really going to look at them?
Yeah.
Like, like there's a lot of follow-ups, but as part of your engagements, do you try to plan out with like the HR person or the learning and development person? Do you try to plan out an ongoing engagement for, maybe it's not in front of the room or on Zoom reads, but there's some sort of way that people can do this? And I'm partially asking because I'm interested in how this goes out there. And I'm partially asking selfishly because I do some of this work specifically right now around DISC and the DISC framework through Wiley and Sons. And I designed a program with a company where I'm the ongoing person there. And we will be scheduling facilitated like quarterly meetings to keep the conversation going and keep the momentum going. Is that something that you also offer? And to me, that seems to be a missing in a lot of corporate trainings to me, is like the ongoing support.
It's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah.
We give people access to some tools and don't check that they're actually doing it correctly. You would never give a tradesman a tool bag and say, this is how you hammer, this is how you saw, this is how you use a screwdriver, and then just assume they can do it. We'd be double checking just on the quality of it. We would all do it differently. And everything that I do, I always think that time-based, having a break in between different sessions is always the best way to go as one. So you can do a double check. So you can write out a 6-session program, but do it over a period, which means after session 2, you need to adjust something. And I'm really open about saying, this is where we're going. And if something else comes up that's more relevant for you, we're going to change it. I'll discuss it with you, but we're going to change it. So it keeps it relevant as one. But sustainment's the other one. No, look, sustainment's twofold. It's making sure that the maximum value is being given, but it also gives us that opportunity to still be the partner. I don't understand why we would make it difficult for ourselves to find business. If we're bringing value, I want to know about it, and I want my client to know about it, and I want them to be able to work out what the return on investment is and see that I'm not a cost. I really bring value to it. If I'm not, I want to know because I need to change something. So something's not worked. So we all have the moments, Jason, where I've done, and it's been a while. But I've done programs I'm thinking that's not hit the way that I wanted it to. So I put on another session. Maybe a shot, maybe I want an hour to check it in. I'm not charged for that. I want to make sure it's working. So, it's never about just coming in, telling people a whole lot of things about what to do and then walking away. There has got to be that collaboration and a check-in. And again, if we're authentic with ourselves, we'll happily take on any of the feedback that we get.
Yeah.
Trust it.
Yep.
Because again, it's not about me. It's never about me. Ever.
Yeah. 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 And I know you from, being with you throughout a different environment than this, and also getting to know you as as a friend and a colleague in similar spaces. You've been doing quite a bit longer than me. Is you are everything you say is very authentic to you. You are a very giving person, and you really have an eye on the people around you, which I think makes you a really spectacular at what you do. And I also just want to say this live that you're being quite humble. The level of training that you provide and where you've gotten to in this profession is quite high. And we'll leave it at that. I'm not going to embarrass you or say anything further because probably won't like that about that. But I want to say that Graham is really phenomenal at what he does. I just want to tell you that here live so other people can hear that.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. And now that I buttered you up,
what do you want?
Yeah. Oh, Graham, I was thinking about raising the 5K to 10K to that bank account. I hope that's okay. You're like two former salespeople talking to each other in a podcast. You're like, so here it comes. No, what's actually coming is the part of the show where you get to ask me a question. So I'm hoping I was nice enough to you where you give me something really easy. No, I'm kidding. You can ask me whatever you want, Graham. So What could I answer for you and for the audience that you've been wondering about that you could ask me?
So what is the square root of,
oh God. The thing that the thing about the thing that's outside your comfort zone, doing math outside my comfort zone. I hate math.
Okay, hold on. Is it math or maths? Because to me, it's got to be maths. It's got to have an S on the end.
I hate doing maths. Yes.
One thing that does jump out, just I know your background. I've got a good idea about your background. You're at high tech, really cutting edge technology companies, working with them. And now you work probably one of the oldest professions, which is around mindset. It's about working with the human brain, and human emotions, things that we struggle to invent, if that makes sense. This is kind of what you and I do has been going around for a long time, and it'll be here a lot longer, way past us. I'm interested in what the challenge maybe was, or what you found with the transition between doing something that was completely creative, forward-thinking constantly, and now something that's probably regarded as more reflective.
Yeah. As a coach, I'm thinking about your question and the context of it being an either or.
Mm.
And I want to think about this. It's a really good question. I've never had this asked before. It's funny that you say that, Graham, because I find my life to be so much more creative now than it used to be. So it's interesting that you said the word creative, and I'm really thinking about that. Yeah, I mean, sales is creative, I think. Not every salesperson is creative, but some of those salespeople are amazing salespeople. So it's not that you have to be like quote unquote creative. I think for me, I was actually somebody in my sales career who wasn't quite as creative. Like, I was actually a person who I like to be improvisational in the moment with people because I'm a people person, but I always wanted to be really choreographed. I wanted to show up and have like the slides and be really prepared and, like practice my presentations. So in that way, I think I kind of had and maybe that's more preparation, not so much lack of creativity. But I kind of always had a way of like, this is the right way to do deals. This is the right way to close deals. And I was kind of always managed that way too. And when you work I worked at a couple of big companies that you can't scale a company unless you've got some pretty specific processes around to do that. I actually find coaching to be very creative. And I was this is such a timely question. Have you ever done Lunch Club, Graham?
Can't say I have.
Yeah, Lunch Club's online networking, one-on-one meetings. If you want to meet amazing people, it's fantastic. And I just had a session this morning with a lovely person named Sierra. Sierra, if you're listening, hi again. I talked to her at 9 today, and she's a digital marketing person, and we were talking about coaching. And it turns out that she's an improv person. So she went through UCB in the city. She still does improv, albeit, not quite as much with COVID. And I was telling her my journey of improv, and my journey to where we are sitting here today having this podcast actually started with improv. And then and then we were talking about coaching. I said, my first coach said something amazing to me. I asked her, and my first coach I met, she was my improv teacher. And I met her, we talked, I ended up hiring her, best decision I ever made, changed my life. I actually asked her once, I'm like, so how do you relate improv to coaching? And she's like, dude, what do you think I do for 55 minutes with you? I was like, oh yeah, right. Cause I don't send you anything ahead of time. I show up on a call with you and I say, hey, I want to talk about this thing that's either going well or not going well. I want to move forward in my life. She's like, yeah, we catch up for 5 minutes. You give me a topic and then we literally create something for 50 minutes and then we wrap it up. And I'm like, so I actually find my life now is so much more creative. And one of the things that we look at in my coaching program is the idea of your life's purpose. I know it sounds a little woo-woo, but it's the thing that you're put here on earth to do, whether you believe, you're created here or you're just born here, it doesn't really matter. And so for me, mine is creation. And so when I'm creating something, and that can be all sorts of different things, I actually find that I'm at my best. And I find when I'm creating things with my clients and yes, of course, being reflective, but sitting back with them and actually helping them create what they want in their life is actually a very creative process for me. And also running my own business is I love that part of it, because I can wake up and be like, I'm going through a rebrand right now, and that's going to come out in a few weeks. I'm like, what do I want to do? I don't know, whatever I want. Like, there's no CMO telling me that, hey, you got to use these colors and these fonts and all these things. So I'm so struck that you said creative, because I actually think for me, it's the reverse. And it's a good question, because I could see where for some people it's not, but for me, based on how I used to be and the breakthroughs that I've had in my life through all the work I've done on myself, I find myself in a much more creative space now.
It's interesting, just because what we do, we need to be more creative than ever. And I was interested in how you saw it, because when we're selling, we've got an end purpose.
Yeah.
The purpose is to get people to try something, use something, buy something, whatever it is. Consider us, and we've got an end purpose. When we're training or coaching, there's not necessarily, the end purpose is actually very high level. We can't decide what someone else is going to take out of it.
That's right.
So we've got to be as flexible as we possibly can. And I keep on coming back to it again. If we go in with a preconceived idea that I want a 10 out of 10 rating out of this, or I want this to happen in the room, then that's arrogant. And we then forget about who's in the room. So I'm with you on the creativity and the flexibility, and certainly the improv.
Yeah.
I was interested in that transition where you've gone from kind of probably things to people.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, totally. Totally. I mean, and that's one of the, I think one of the major challenges for me and most people that I know that come into coaching from more the pure consulting world and the more of the selling products is, I said this to my friend last night. I was doing a little bit of coaching with him because I'm a nice friend. I told him I would send his company the invoice later.
I know, fairness, that's for them to judge.
Exactly. And for those of you listening, I don't do free coaching for everybody. You have to be a friend of mine. So if you want to be a friend of mine, let's talk about it.
Send me $5,000.
Yeah, exactly. Here's the bank account number. Send some money there. But what I was telling him is, exactly what you said about because he was like, he's going through an interview process right now. And he said, he's like, I'm so good at interviewing, and he's a manager at a software company. He's like, I'm so good at interviewing, and I'm so good at getting to the point until they ask me, why are you the guy for the job? And he has a really hard time selling himself, because he's really focused on others, maybe even arguably a little too much. But what I told him, I said, dude, imagine that, and then imagine all you've got is yourself. So Graham, for you as a trainer, there's a lot of trainers out there. Yes, you have a brand behind you, you've got some content, but at the end of the day, people are buying you and your team. People that want to work with me, it's just me. And all you're going to get is my time, my energy, my commitment, some skills that I built up over the years, and the being that I bring to our calls, and who I am as a person. But that's all I got for you. I don't have books and products to sell you. So that has been a big context shift for me. And also, I think this is something that most all people who move from selling for others to selling their own things run into at some point, is wow. And then for me, it's well, what do you make it mean about you? If they say no, are you a bad person? Is your products crappy? For some people, maybe, but I think for most of that's been a big change for me. And also that kind of goes back to your original question about creative, is getting more creative in how I present myself, and moving away from selling, and which is about, like you said, is about me and my agenda, into enrolling and partnering with somebody that's a good fit, so that they see how it's valuable for them, and I don't have to sell anything. Hey, this is what I got for you. And it goes back to the authenticity that you were talking about for yourself. This is what I have for you. This is what I do. Are you interested or not? If you're not interested, no problem. There's, like you said, there's plenty of work for everybody. I'll refer you somebody. Oh, you are interested. What else do you need to know? As opposed to, let me give you the 14 bullet points on the features and benefits of why working with Jason is the best thing ever. And that has been something that I've really had to work on, and I'm still working on, because it's pretty ingrained in me from spending so much time in sales.
Yeah. And it's in, when we go through this journey, personally, we're as trainers, coaches, facilitators, whatever we want to call ourselves, I know that we go through this constantly saying, am I doing this right? Am I doing it the right way? Am I serving this other person the right way? And it's actually almost something you can't sell. You can only let people attach them, see who you are, and see if that trust can be built, that people are actually certain that you're going to bring them value and you're going to look after them. It's interesting being a former salesperson. I'm pulled in by companies on a regular basis now that I work with to be the trainer in a sales meeting. And I'm not seen as a salesperson. I could almost say whatever I want because I'm not the salesperson, and people will trust me more because I'm actually talking about, here are the ideas. This is how I think we could structure this. This is what might work with your team. What do you think? And they're listening to me. The salesperson's pushed aside, and at the end of the day, my background's sales. But when you're coming at it with the right purpose, the right thought, that we want, I learned something years ago. I remember when I bought my first second-hand car. I was used to having company cars at the time, so I was always given a car. Every job I had in sales, and I went to buy my first one, and it's a really simple sales thing. But I remember sitting with a second-hand car salesman. Now, I'm not sure what the reputation's like here, Jason. It's not great in the UK for a second-hand.
Not great. I think it's probably a little stereotypical. I'm sure there's some amazing people out there. But
I spoke with this guy. He had exactly what I wanted. He knew it was written all over my face. I'm a terrible buyer. And I kind of said to him, what's the deal? He said, that's the deal. That's it. And he says, look, Graham, I want to sell you your next 5 cars over the next 15 years. I don't want to sell you this one. So you called me, I found you this. When you want your next one, I want you calling me again. So the only way that's going to happen is if you feel you've had value, I've looked after you, and you're all good with this car. So that's your price. Do you want it? I was like, where do I sign? And I always go into a meeting with that thought is, how are we going to be still speaking in 10 or 15 years' time? What's the
I
next?
love that.
So it's never. Sorry, I hope you don't mind. I got another one about this. About
Please.
4 or 5 years ago, I was asked to do a reading at a wedding.
Oh, nice.
And it was lovely. And I'm there and I said, why did you ask me? He says, because you'll stand up and you'll just talk. Thanks. I was the only one that would do it. I remember
he's like, I asked 11 other people and they all said no. So you were 12th on my list.
And they said, I remember standing up the beer afterwards, and it was a really nice day. And we're all there in our kilts and getting our photographs taken. Somebody said to me, how do you know Gordon? And I had to stop and think. And I went, oh, he actually used to be a client. I'd forgotten completely. And we're still good friends 20 years after we met. And I don't think we've done business in the last 15. If we could do business, we're completely different. He's now, he's in construction. I'm not. If we could do business, we would be doing a lot together. We've just gone our separate ways, but we're mates.
That's great.
Are we in each other's pockets? No. Can we? I've not seen him now since I came to New York in 3 years. If I bumped into him tomorrow, it would be like, I'd only just seen him yesterday. And it's one of those things that's what I'm not saying we're going out to look for friends, but that's the kind of relationships that we should be building. There's that much trust there that when other things come in, the personal side comes in and that fits, then it's natural. And if the personal side doesn't come in, then you've still got a trusted partner.
Yeah. Yeah, and I want to wrap this up by sharing something with you. A common group, how we actually know each other is through a networking group. And yesterday, one of our esteemed, I consider her a dear friend, former podcast guest from last year, Casey. Mm-hmm. She did something that we call a spotlight, and usually the spotlights are kind of about her business. She spotlighted herself. She spent 20 minutes talking about her role as a mother. She's a faith author. She has a daughter. She's divorced, and she actually opened up with us and shared about. And she's a financial planner and a CPA, and so she talked a little bit about that, but it was more in the context of, why do I do what I do? Not what do I do? And it was awesome, Graham. You would have been so impressed. So I was another person was there that we both know, Jay, and I was texting him. I said, "This is what we need to do for everybody in this group. We all know what each other does. What's important is that we get to know people in this way." It was really cool, and just I think it built a lot of goodwill and energy and relationship between these people. We all know each other, but it's now like, what's the next step in this relationship? How we can really help each other outside of Graham's a trainer and Jason's a coach and Casey's a financial planner. Like, great. But like, that's not actually what I mean, I care because I like to send people business and do business with people that I like, but what I really care about is them as human beings and who they are holistically.
Jason, I don't know if you remember this. I'm sure you will when I kind of mention it, is that when we first met, there was a good possibility that we clashed. If you give us a title, we've got a very similar title.
Right.
And all we did was, let's jump on a call and see if we can work together.
Yeah, exactly.
And we didn't need to actually do business together. It was just, be side by side together and trust each other. So, and that was a really easy conversation.
Totally. Abundance mindset. Like you said, there's plenty of business out there.
Of course there is. Absolutely. Yeah. For good people. We're good. We're
most of the time. I'm not going to claim to be a good person all the time.
No, I'm saying there's plenty of business for good people. I'm never saying
for good people.
Yeah.
You're not saying I'm a good person, please. Don't stereotype me into that good person thing. All right.
No, I would never do that. I promise. I would.
Don't ever do that. Don't ever do that. Well, thank you for the question, Graham. I love that. Was a really thoughtful question that really got me thinking about it. I'm feeling very grateful that what I do now is actually more aligned with who I want to be and actually provides me a lot more joy and to me is more creative. So thank you for helping me feel even better about myself than I already did, which I feel pretty good today. So thanks. All right. We're going to go back to you now, my friend, because I got a few more things to ask you about before we wrap up today. So the first question I have for you as we come back to you is, Graham, what is something that you are passionate about?
When I think about what am I passionate about? I'm passionate about lots of things. I'm passionate about understanding news and politics. I'm passionate about my football team, and that's proper football, not that American stuff that you guys play.
Oh, you mean like that small game that's being played on February 7th between Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes?
Yeah,
is that the game? Yeah, that small sport. I get you.
I'm really passionate about doing different things, just kind of experiencing different things. That's where my main passion comes from. So when I kind of look back at what I've done over the last 3 years, being in New York, I've been at the New York Stock Exchange, which I kind of thought was everybody gets the chance to do that, but apparently not. I stood on the ledge on Broadway of my office watching a ticker tape parade. There's just all these things I just want to experience. I'm really passionate about seeing things. And I know I do this when the lockdown first started last year. I started jumping on city bikes early in the morning and cycling through New York and seeing it in its rawest state. I've got hundreds and hundreds of photographs of absolutely empty streets, frighteningly empty streets, but just seeing it in a different way. So that was a regular thing I did. Go around. I would want to see different things that were off the beaten track, things that people wouldn't necessarily normally go and see.
Yeah.
And then I would jump on the ferry and get the ferry back up to Upper East Side with being the only person on it.
That's amazing. I love that ferry. You're the only person on it. Really, that's great. Because I can't remember. Did the ferry shut down at all during the pandemic?
No, it was always there. I think maybe technically, possibly, it was for essential workers. But, this is everything was about, and New York's attitude to what has happened has been really interesting because it's been, here's the information, do the right thing. It's not actually been hard and fast rules. Now I know they've closed down indoor dining, etc. But the focus was, wear a mask. This is why. This is still a topic of debate in the UK a year later, which is just incredible. But New York was great at just giving information, and it said, this is for these people. But it was always, to me, it was always around, if you do the right things, everybody's good. So my passion was going out and exploring, seeing something new, experiencing something, and also I take a lot of photographs and share them on social media to allow my friends back in the UK to experience it if they want to. through me. And again, it's
Yeah.
not about me. It's genuinely not about me. It's not the big look at what I'm experiencing. I'm always shocked when someone says it's amazing that you're there. I forget what it's like to live in New York City just because I'm surrounded by it. But I love being able to allow other people to see it in a different way.
Yeah, I was just going to say, and we'll share this as we at the end of the episode when we wrap up. We'll get you people if people want to connect with you. Highly recommend you follow Graham. You take some great photographs of all this, and it's personally meant a lot to me because, and we never talked about this, but I've been out of the city since last March, and you took pictures of all the COVID things, but you also took a lot of really amazing pictures of the George Floyd riots and such,
Yep.
which had me feel connected to the city. And you're a great photographer, and I also like how you take photographs like really early in the morning. I think that's really cool. So I don't think you knew that I mean, you probably know that I saw him, but like I saw him and paid attention to him. So thank you. I would highly recommend people follow Graham on Facebook. One, because he's a great person, as you could probably hear, but two, he takes great photographs. So if nothing else, you'll get value from him from his photographs.
Thank you for that. You'll see a photograph of me with a big furry hat on this morning. It was that cold.
Oh yeah. Yes. Well, that's probably smart. All right. Next question for you. We talked about a lot of things today, and I want to circle around to the thing that you're most proud of. So and I know this is going to be limiting, but taking a look at your life and looking back at what you've done, you created, and all the other stuff, Graham, what's the thing that you are most proud of?
I'm going to be really boring here because this sounds like I'm coming back to the same thing, but it's actually coming here. We're always proud of our families and kids and what's achieved and everything like that. But if there was something that I said has helped to define me, it's actually moving here. There was no doubt in my mind about doing it, and when I got here, it was not what I expected. And just having the resilience to dig in and be myself here has been probably one of the proudest things that I've managed to do. Because there was so many points that I was expecting. Some of them was, do I need to change? And I resisted change on it and just thought, right, I kind of need to be me. Yeah, we're going to adapt. We're going to be flexible, but I still need to be my core. And I didn't change that, and that's kind of what led to success here. Yeah. So I am genuinely proud of that.
Yeah, very cool. All right, Graham, we start to wrap up here. Got a couple more minutes for you, if you've got them for me. So I think you do. I think we're good on time. By the way, make a wish. It's 11:11 Eastern, so let's close your eyes, make a wish. And the reason I say this is we do this with my daughter, who's almost 5. So I thought we could do the same thing. Why not? Let's bring out our inner child here. All right. What is something that you're afraid might actually be true about you?
Afraid that might actually be true. That's a difficult question, Jason. I'm going to say this. Hopefully, I know that you know me well enough to know kind of where this comes from, but I worry sometimes that I'm not using what I've got to the best of my ability, and I because we do what we do, we get lots of kind of compliments or people saying, "Oh, I'd love to be able to do that," or "You should do this." And sometimes I'm actually afraid that I'm better than I think I am, and I'm going to miss out. And I toy with this all the time. So, for example, I've got a radio show. I was asked 4 or 5 years ago to start doing podcasting. I thought I could never do that. And I've done some, small bits of television, and I could never do that. And I keep on pushing things away. And what really I get afraid of, or I've got a fear of, is I'm sitting in 5 years' time going, why did I not just do this? Somebody's told me something that I could have done it, or I would have been good at it, or why have I not just done it? So I'm regularly afraid that what other people say about me is true, and I dismiss it. It's a real conundrum. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it does. Yeah, I think that's it's an interesting one. I think that's something I would consider, as a fellow person who does a lot, and I think you're driven and inspiring and everything. I think that's a pretty normal human condition for somebody. And I think I've talked about, like, our disc profiles were very similar. I think that's a pretty normal human condition for kind of like, I think you are pretty similar in a lot of ways, like where it's always, I'm just thinking out loud here. The context of it's never enough.
Yeah.
Like when is it enough? I actually was coaching a client on this yesterday. It's like, when is it enough? And that's the answer she's trying to answer for herself. She's launching a brand and she's really struggling with like her what for around it. And she's constantly coming up with reasons why she shouldn't do it. And she finally landed, and this is something she landed on. I didn't coach her to this, but she got there herself. It's like, she's like, I realized it's never going to be enough for me. So I actually, if I want to do this, because she does want to do it, like, when is it going to be enough for me to actually move this forward? And I resonate a lot with what you said, because I think that's one of the results of that for some people. I don't know if this is you. Definitely for me is the shiny object syndrome.
Yeah.
Oh, I got the certification. Great. What's the next certification? What's the next coach training program? I did NLP. Now let's go do something else. And all these things versus like, hey, like just owning and leaning into and doubling, tripling, quadrupling down on the things that you're actually really good at and you actually really enjoy, and always chasing for like the next thing. And being a lifelong learner is a beautiful thing, but also is a struggle, because I'm never satisfied with my knowledge. I'm always going to want to know more about things. And I think this is another thing you and I share. We're both naturally curious people, which then puts you into that space of like, well, there's things I don't know that I need to know. And in this day and age, there's always going to be new information, every minute of every day.
See, there's actually two ways to take that question, because what I'm not afraid of is some of the things that might actually be true is the negative stuff, because I get it.
Mm-hmm.
So I get that maybe I'm short-tempered or irritable or moody or boom, 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 all these things, but I'm Scottish. It's part of my DNA. Like, I'm allowed to be. I saw somebody bought me a mug once saying, as a Scot, I have the right to remain silent. As a Scot, I don't have the ability. So I kind of accept, and I'm not afraid of the bad stuff. The bad stuff doesn't scare me at all, because I know it's there and I try to work in it, and I fail regularly. It's the good stuff that I kind of worry. I think, well, what if I can do this, or what if? But then the curiosity kicks in, and I have to take that step forward.
Very cool. All right, let's spend a minute, because we've been kind of going through this the whole episode here. But if you could sum up the general philosophy on life. In other words, you wake up in the morning and it's going to be a good day, or you think it's going to be a good day. How do you see the world? Like, what's your philosophy on the world and on life?
I can't wait for someone to ask me a question and me to say yes, and then work it out from there.
That's awesome.
Just seriously, opportunities come our way on a regular basis. Sometimes we don't see them. Sometimes we just dismiss them. I am one of those people who, when they say, can you do this? I went, of course I can. And then go away and think, okay, how do I do it? And if I ever think I'm never going to serve someone, I'll make sure I'll look after them and get someone else. But my go-to is say yes. Another one as well is, if today's the day I fail, genuinely, tomorrow's going to be a better day. I've got more knowledge.
There you go. I love that.
I genuinely 100% walk in thinking. I had one the other night. I had 250 people on a webinar that the technology wasn't working, and it was in Sydney, Australia. I'm thinking, this is going to be the one that I fail at. This is going to be the one that doesn't work. And we made it work. The feedback's been phenomenal. But when I go into that kind of when I've got that attitude, I've got nothing to lose.
Yeah,
I've got no fear.
Yeah, that's amazing. Was this always your philosophy, or have you grown into this as you've experienced time, all that stuff?
It's interesting. I've grown into it. I was approached by Dale Carnegie about 7 years ago to become a trainer, and it's a really arduous process. It took me over a year to become a trainer. That was after being approached. Yeah. And I remember for something, it kind of happened then, and I don't know what the point was, but I'd go home every night saying, they want me back tomorrow.
You had imposter syndrome.
I just kind of went, okay, right, they want me back. They must see something. I don't see it, but they see it. Let me go and see what happens tomorrow. And I just genuinely went, I had no plan on this. And that's something I don't do. I'm pretty bad at planning. I kind of do lots of good things and know something will happen.
Yeah. You're such an eye on the disc. Yeah, the plan's fine, but really it's about what is my vision? What's inspiring to me?
Yeah, let's just keep this going, see what happens.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome, Graham. That's a really, I mean, that's improv 101. It's cliche, but yes anding life.
Yeah.
So that kind of leads me back to my original offer to you of the bank account number. Sounds like the answer is yes to my request, and we'll just figure it out. Maybe we can figure that out offline. That's what I'm hearing.
The numbers in just in a different office. Let me go and get it when we're off air, and everything will be great. Honest.
You'll be like, the numbers. This bank account is located in North Korea, and we'll be letting the FBI know once the transfer is through. So yes, absolutely, this is a great idea, Jason. You do your thing. That sounds great. That sounds great. All right, thanks, Graham. So we're going to start to wrap up today, but I wanted to give you a chance to share a little bit how the audience can connect with you and learn more about you, what you're up to, check out your pictures and everything. And, you know, as I always say on the show, these will all be in the show notes as well. But Graham, how can the audience connect with you?
You know, I'm really lucky, Jason. I've got one of those names that's really unusual. Probably the best way to connect with me is on LinkedIn. Just do that, and we can have that chat. Graham Dobbin, I think there's 3 Graham Dobbins in the world. There's only one in New York. I think there actually might only be one on the East Coast of America. So LinkedIn is a really, really good way of connecting with me, and then everything else is there. Everything else.
Very nice. Very nice. We'll put that all in there. We'll also put the link to your company on there, and I might actually surprise you and put a link to some videos you've done recently for a pretty big telecommunications company. That's pretty awesome stuff too. So. You know, Graham, you're an inspiring guy, but also a very humble guy. So you're not sharing your full truth, but that's totally fine. Well, I'll out you in the show notes. So for those listening who like Graham, which I'm sure everybody does, check out the show notes. There's a special surprise for you in there. And no, it's not him on TikTok dancing or anything like that. It's a little more business than that. But maybe, hey, you know what? Actually, Graham, I had an idea. Since you're a yes person, would you do a dancing video on TikTok that I could then share out with the audience through the show notes?
Jeez, yes.
You should know me by now. Don't test me, because I will push you to the edge. Everybody to the edge.
On one condition. We try to do one in different areas together, or we blend it or something.
Oh, that would be. Can you imagine if we did that and we went viral? You and I dancing in a TikTok video, and blended it somehow.
See.
All right. Yes, and it. Sure. Let's go. Let's do it. We just got to figure out which song we want to dance to.
Yeah.
I love it. This is why the audience is stuck around this long to hear this diatribe. So now you can know what we're really going to be doing here. This is the what do you call it? Like, this is the cliffhanger that we finally reached. Is this whole episode is actually about Jason offering to do a TikTok video with Graham and dancing it's side by side. And the answer was yes for both of us. So there we go.
I remember going out to Corona Park a few months ago when it was during the lockdown, and watching some guy in a car park with an iPhone and a tripod dancing in front of it. And I couldn't work out what was going on. My friend said they're making a TikTok video. He was there all day. I mean,
he's an influencer, man. He's making money.
But he must have been there all day. It didn't look great fun. It must have lasted 20 seconds. Come on.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm a little past that age to hear that much about it. I do like Instagram a lot, but I'm not on TikTok. I heard it's a huge waste of time. As most people are like, it's so fun and a huge waste of time. And I'm like, I have enough things in my life that are hugely fun and a waste of time. Adding another one, probably not a good idea for me.
TikTok is becoming very prominent. They're building a lot now in North America, and I know that I've got a very good friend again who's working really closely with them, really closely with them. And I find it interesting that it's kind of one of those things that's just come up almost in the last 12 months where a brand has really taken hold. I mean, it was all over Times Square for New Year and for the ball dropping. So that's actually a company I'm really interested in watching how they develop.
Very cool. Yeah, ByteDance is the name of the company, isn't it? ByteDance? I think it's ByteDance is the name of the company who owns TikTok. Chinese company. As we learned about the political... Remember when that was a story? Like, TikTok's going to be banned in the United States? Like, that was actually a story that anybody cared about?
And they
funny.
kept going.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Graham, let's wrap it up for today. And I'm going to wrap it up the way I always wrap up the show, with some words of wisdom from my esteemed guest. So what do you have for us? And make it short and sweet.
What's next? What's the question you've not asked? It's as simple as that. Keep asking yourself, what's next? What else could happen? Just keep on looking beyond where you are at the minute. And then make the decision whether you want to step forward.
That's right. Yeah. In coaching, we call this see possibility.
Yep.
It's something that I'm always working on too, because I think for a lot of my life, I was not somebody who saw possibility. I saw probability and I saw practicality. And possibility is just a lot more fun.
It is.
Thank you so much, Graham. It's been awesome to have you on. We've been talking about this for a while. We finally made it happen. And I wish you and your team the very best of everything you're up to in the work front. I wish you the very best in what you're up to and your travels coming up here. And I have a feeling we'll get a chance to actually hang out and finally grab a drink together in the city when you're back and I'm back, and we don't have to wear masks and we have shots in our arms and all that stuff. So again, congratulations on everything, Graham. Thank you so much and have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you so much for having me on, Jason. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, Graham.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Talking to Cool People with Jason Frizzell. If you enjoyed today's episode, please tell your friends. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook and give us a shout out, or take a moment to leave a review on iTunes. If something from today's episode piqued your interest and you'd like to connect, email us at podcast@jasonfrizzell.com. We love hearing from our listeners because you're cool people too.